the police started arresting LGBT protesters.
Said he would ban pride marches if only the EU would let him.
She accused the LGBT rights movement of promoting a viewpoint more harmful than communism.
Even a symbol of our pride, which is our progress flag, LGBT plus flag, that is a target. If you have a tote bag with this symbol, you are a target. If you have got a pin on your shoulder, that is a target. And there were cases of people being beaten up just because they were showing solidarity, not even being gay.
Currently in Poland, you have the LGBT-free zone, which is an ideology which restricts people who define as LGBT to exist in certain parts. Almost a third of Poland currently has LGBT-free zones, where it's a very insidious policy where LGBT culture isn't allowed to exist. It's an ideology, it's a disease, it's something coming from foreign countries, it's not natural, it's in direct contradiction to the very narrow-minded, nuclear family, heteronormative, super Christian ideology, and therefore it shouldn't be allowed to exist. Each year, Rainbow Europe ranks European countries on the freedoms granted to the LGBT+ community. While the UK ranks number 11, Poland ranks 43rd out of 49.
Going to Poland, just basically passing Polish border, we are
Polish,
strangers
so
to each other, because when you in Poland and you have Polish passport, the Polish law applies from family to strangers. Just in Poland, everywhere else in the world we recognized, hopefully everywhere, which recognize LGBT rights anyway. The law is not helping, not covering in case
we are not
anything
family
happen.
for them. Like whatever will happen, I don't know even.
Councils declare themselves as being an LGBT-free zone. What the result of that is that emboldens the local population to seek out LGBT people. You know, if you're in an LGBT-free zone area, there'll be no LGBT plus cafes or community spaces because they are not allowed to exist. They're not allowed to exist as queer people. They're not allowed to have the infrastructure to support themselves. So therefore, people are scared to walk down the street in case someone's going to be like, oh, that's my niece's friend. I had my suspicion that they might be a lesbian. And then people are getting attacked, both in the streets and at pride demonstrations. There is an uprising which is going on, which is super inspiring. A lot of people call it the Polish Stonewall, where people have learnt from history, have learnt how integral resistance is and standing up and being vocal and being proud. So people are building international networks of solidarity and support and exchanges of information, not to mention what's called rainbow railroads, where active routes to get out of Poland into places like the UK are being supported. In 2004 and 5, Kaczynski was mayor of Warsaw. He was also the founder of the Law and Justice Party. At this time, the Law and Justice Party started banning prides in Warsaw. Legislative oppression leads to mass oppression on the streets because the far right are emboldened by what they're seeing going on in Parliament with the Law and Justice Party to attack queers and other minorities on the street. In 2019 in Białystok, the far right were there out in force and chucking bottles, bricks, firecrackers at the pride demonstrators, where many of them ended up in hospital. This is in 2019, right? Where far right activists are emboldened and literally want to see queer people dead. So I was there in 2021, and it was really beautiful to see people coming back out in force after they were attacked and bleeding from their faces 2 years before. So people are defiant, people are coming back out, people are not standing for the LGBT-free zone ideology and challenging the far right. This time, because of the attention that came about because of the attacks, there was a lot more police, there was a lot more security, there was a lot more international press. But there's still so much danger. And this kind of oppression is still going on. In November 2021, Polish far-right activists in the city of Kalisz were shouting, "Death to Jews." The rally organisers said, LGBT, pederasts and Zionists are the enemies of Poland.
My family in Poland do not know that I am gay. My cousin once told me that all gay people should be put in concentration camps because there's too many of them. At Christmas, I kept being asked about girlfriends and marriage, and the phrase, "God forbid you have a boyfriend," came up.
Often we're called paedophiles. Being LGBT plus is seen as a disease that is contagious. So personally, I try and shake hands with as many of them as possible to spread the great disease that is homosexuality, and that we are the reason for the downfall of civilization, which is quite an attribute. The scale of psychological warfare as well as the threats on the street are huge. If we allow pride protests to be made illegal, we're really in danger.
Yeah, so for example, if my wife would die, the law is like, I'm a stranger to my son. There is no connection between me and my son. So they would take him away from me, like easily, in Poland. So we said like, okay, we need to have that peace of mind and find a safe place to live. So we decided, okay, let's go to England. So we packed everything and then we moved.
So I've been going back and forwards to Poland, both investigating my own biological family story and what happened to my grandparents during the war, as well as building connections with queer communities across Poland. And what I've seen is that the threats by the far right, who are increasing in numbers on the street, is the first danger. But the second danger is how long can queer people continue resisting in the face of such adversity, in the face of the LGBT-free zones, plus the fact that now prides might be made illegal in themselves. That was the one place where people could come together, build community, empower themselves to challenge the LGBT-free zones. If they're not even allowed to do that, they'll be living in isolation and marginalisation even further, and the situation will get worse. Far-right nationalism and populism isn't just Poland. What's going on in Hungary, what's going on in Austria, what's going on in Brazil. There's the rise of the far-right in the whole of the world, as well as what's going on in the UK. We've had 150% rise in hate crime attacks of all marginalised communities, people of colour, the Roma community, women, the LGBTQIA population since Brexit, and people are being emboldened by the hostile environment policies. So we have to work on both fronts, challenge the rise of hate crime here, support the Rainbow Railroad for people fleeing persecution in other countries, as well as work out what we can strategically do to support people in Poland.
I would have been afraid of being beaten up. The stories that I just heard from my friends going out in drag on the street has just been terrifying. So that's why every time I do go out in Poland, I'm very reserved, very baggy clothes and all these things. But yeah, I just wouldn't go out in drag.
There's one saying that has always been stuck in my head from my Polish nan, who was a Holocaust survivor, who saw the Warsaw ghetto burn down from her hiding place. She always said to me, never again, ever. And that stuck in my psyche as a kid. And other friends who are also Holocaust survivors and commit their lives to the principle of never again, ever say, yes, the Nazi Holocaust might not be happening now, but the infrastructure that enables it to exist is still there, like homophobic, misogynistic legislation. So if we want to live in the principles and genuinely pay tribute and do everything we can to never again ever, we have to get rid of this infrastructure. So we still have a lot of work to do, but we have to keep the flames alive and keep the resilience alive to be able to get there.